Good morning everybody, this is Emra, and today we're covering the past weekend of Overwatch League action. We had a ton of crazy games, and if you guys haven't watched much of the games this week, you need to go back and rewatch them, because honestly, it was some of the craziest DPS play that we've seen all year long. And I'm sure if you've been watching other recap videos, you've already been told that, so let's start getting into some of the results. First off, my heart goes out to every Guangzhou Charge and Hangzhou Spark fan out there, as they both went to 2 Game 5s. Oh, it was rough. So let's start off with the Charge first, actually, who won both their Game 5s. They beat the Seoul Dynasty 3-2, and they also beat the Hangzhou Spark 3-2. And the thing is, these guys, they only have a +1 map differential, so it's really hard for me to believe that they're going to be a top 5 team for a very long period of time unless they start to work out some more of the problems, because it's just, everything's so close with these guys. It's like on a nice edge, where if you look at the other top 5 teams, they all have way higher win rates, like map differential. And the Guangzhou Charge are a good team. I'm pretty impressed with how they do. They're obviously squeaking out with the wins, but like when it comes to like a summer showdown tournament type thing, I don't know if they have what it takes. They're just 2 on the brink. And the Seoul Dynasty and the Hangzhou Spark, neither of them are spectacular teams. They're both teams that everybody's actually kind of angry at right now for not performing as well as they should. So the fact that the Charge are struggling against them so much is a bit worrying. But either way, it's cool to see them performing well. I know at the beginning of the season, a lot of people had them ranked really highly. I did not have them so high. I had them down more around 9th, I think. But it's exciting to see them turn up and actually perform pretty well. Next up, we'll have the Hangzhou Spark, who also went to 2 Game 5s. Their first was against the New York Excel, who they actually beat, and then they lost to the Guangzhou Charge. So after beating the New York Excel, everyone was kind of expecting. I certainly expect them to be able to take down the Charge as well. I was really impressed with how the Hangzhou Spark played against the XL. Their DPS absolutely popped off and really stopped XL from doing much. Even like when Saviolvi would come in and have to dual Architect on the Striker, Architect on the Tracer, Saviolvi really couldn't do much, like especially on Ilios. And it was like there were a lot of these Tracer 1v1s where he was just getting beat by Architect. But not even that, Jonak and like the rest of the team couldn't really hold up against the way the Hangzhou Sparks DPS were playing. The field was just so open, they'd get like separated, especially against the Widowmaker. It felt like Jonak on that one point on Ilios, they really couldn't get much done. And so eventually I thought the New York Excel are actually going to edge it out on map 6, right? Because they actually drew one of the maps. Saviolvi didn't really do super great on the Tracer didn't do super great on Ilios, but then the next map they kept Saviolvi in and put him on the McCree, and he actually dominated the first point. He got several huge picks in the first few fights, which really set them up for that first round win, but then they weren't able to take either of the next rounds. So overall impressions from that game, I thought Hangzhou Spark looking serious. I had them rated high pretty early in the season. Maybe this is the turning point? But honestly, I think it just came down to New York Excel not being able to handle the playstyle, and we've seen this inconsistency from New York all season long, where they're not that dominant team we all want them to be. There's back going this year one, they were so dominant, but they weren't able to win up the title. And in year 2, the Titans and the Shock took all the fame. And coming into this season, we're all hoping with a few pickups, the Excel would come in and dominate again. And they're still a top 5 team. I don't have any doubt about that. But they're just, something's not clicking there. That I don't think they're the top team in the league, or like, even top 3 even. Mandu, he had a pretty decent debut, or I don't know if it was a debut or not, actually I don't remember. But he performed well. I wasn't super impressed as far as like, carry potential. But I do think he played well, and it'll fit well in the team once he gets more experience with them. But then Mika, on the other hand, I thought he was pretty good. Lots to talk about how good his Mercy was, but even when he wasn't playing Mercy, I thought he performed pretty solidly. Obviously, they got the win against the Excel, but they did end up struggling against the Charge, where, honestly, the Charge, they're a decent team. Let me check their roster here. I can't remember quite off the top of my head. Let's see. Yeah, so Eileen and Happy. Happy did so well. Rio, Krong, Chara, and Shu, I'll think those guys are solid. Again, like, this is for the Guangzhou Charge now. None of them are superstars, but they're all just playing so well that compared to Hangzhou Spark, Godspeed and Architect, when they're playing super well, they can win. That's how they beat the NYXL. But QOQ, also, he had a really good debut. He had a lot of playmaking moments, but he did struggle a lot to I guess not try to go overboard. I thought there were a few times when he probably shouldn't have been as aggressive as he was, but overall he played really well and he made a lot of plays that helped them beat the XL, and honestly I thought we were going to help them beat the Charge. So overall I'm impressed with this Spark, even if they weren't able to grab that win in the second one. Next up, let's talk about the Shock for a little bit. They swept the Eternal and the Washington Justice. I won't go super in depth about this because I actually already made a video the other day discussing why I think they're the best team in the league. And man, their depth is just crazy. They can literally put anybody out there and dominate. What was it in the map series against Paris? They got the 0-3 sweep, and then the Justice did the same thing without Ans, Chayobin, or Twilight. That's nuts. Like, Choyobin and Twilight are two of the best players in the league, and Ansem's like, up there too, especially on that Widow, right? And the Ashe, but no one's even like questioning whether or not these guys can go out there and get the sweep against teams like the Justice. That depth is absolutely insane, and being able to have that kind of versatility throughout the season is going to be huge for those guys. And honestly, I think they're going to be in the finals for the Summer Showdown. Next up, I'm sure this one will be fun. The Houston Outlaws, how about that? They took down the Gladiators. Not the closest game of the week because, there were obviously a ton of Game 5s, some reverse sweeps, but the Houston Outlaws were able to come in and take down the Gladiators. And I always thought it was a really great way to summarize the Gladiators as being the gatekeepers of the league. If you're able to beat these guys, yeah, okay, we can talk about you being in the top tier of the league. If you can't beat them, you don't deserve it. And I think that basically summarizes the Gladiators for like the past 2 years now. They're always right on the brink, but not quite able to pull it through. And this year the Gladiators, they're kind of struggling a little bit. And so if any team was ever able to beat if any week the Outlaws would be able to beat the Gladiators, it was this week, especially with the meta being the way it is. I thought Kevster coming in, making his debut, I didn't think he was spectacular. I didn't think he was horrible though. He put up some pretty decent numbers, but the story of this match was 100% Dante. He absolutely tore up the Gladiators. Now, I think Linkster's performance was underrated as well. Dante and Linkster has always been one of my favorite DPS duos, and when they come and play like this, especially in the meta that fits them, in these 2-week meta pools, hero pools, if they get metas that fit their playstyle, I really think these guys can start competing for a top half of the table spot. I don't think they're good enough to be, top 6, top 8 even, but they're definitely up there, like top 10 area. And I think that Linkster and Dante are the keys to that. Meko, Hydration, Raucous, and Repel, all 4 of those guys are what they played on the first map. And you got guys like Muva coming in a little bit later. I don't think any of that's really... Those guys are all superstars, but I think they're just all solid enough to the point where, yeah, any week these guys can compete. They're not going to be walkovers. But Linkster and Dante, obviously, huge games. Able to take down Kevster and Birdring. Birdring has been in a bit of a hot streak lately, and so it was really good for LS to be able to come out and dominate like that. But like I was saying, the Gladiators are kind of like the gatekeepers of the league, and I think that about summarizes as high as the Gladiators will ever reach this season. The roster has several pieces, but I don't know if it's going to start clicking enough yet until the point where they can really start dominating, especially after a loss to a team like the Outlaws. Because it wasn't like a super close series either, it was 3-1. There were a few close maps, especially Kings Row, but I think that it's looking rough for the Gladiators more and more as the season goes on. And at this point, it's already for the Outlaws worrisome, even though they're showing these bright signs of life. That is, is it almost kind of too late for the whole regular season? I think they have a chance for the Summer Showdown to, maybe make the first round or two and, compete. I just don't think it's enough to the point of regular season domination, you know what I mean? Especially with the metas the way it's going. If these guys can fill in any hero roles that get banned out the next week or two until the Summer Showdown, I think they'll be looking good. Overall, I'm excited to watch how they go, because obviously they're a fan favorite. Everybody loves the Outlaws. And Lynx and Dante, one of my favorite DPS duos. And, one of these days we're seriously going to have a video about just the pure dominance of DPS in the league right now. Kevster and Birdring are both really good players, but Linkster and Dante just dominated. And so it was super awesome to see. I think Meko Hydration is probably their best starting tank lineup. And so that was good to see on the first map, or on Kings Row and Hanamura and stuff. But either way, super good series. Let's move on to the LA Valiant and the Florida Mayhem. So this one, the LA Valiant actually took 3-1, which is a bit of a surprise because I think everyone knows the Valiant can compete on any given day. KSP and Shax are one of the best DPS duos in the league again, but it's just, especially Shax is one of the best Western Traces in the league. but against the Florida Mayhem, who just came off of a finals appearance in the summer or in the main melee. And so yeah, they came in, and BQB and Yaki weren't playing as well as they usually do. I do think Yaki still had a really good performance. That's another topic I did a video on. But Shax just came in and dominated. There were several games this week, I thought, where a lot of the Tracers in the league had pretty good performances, but their counterpart on the other team just completely outclassed them. And that was 100% the case with Yaki and Shax. Even though Yaki had a good game for the Mayhem, Shax was able to just come in and completely dominate. And KSP, honestly, he didn't have an amazing series, but he was really solid, and and BQB just wasn't able to do much against him. As for the rest of the team for the Valiant, Dreamer, McGravy, Lastro, and Rain, I think that's kind of the same situation as with the Outlaws, where there are pieces there for them to compete any given week, but it's not enough for them to push for complete dominance. And so it comes to the point of, do you want to risk, at the end of the season, are you going to go try to pick up a whole bunch of new players and risk that team chemistry and everything? And obviously, I think you have to, but Dreamer, McGravy especially, I think are performing a lot better than anybody expected them to. I know at the beginning of the season there was a lot of talk about them being one of the worst teams in the league. And so it's exciting to see these guys coming along. And speaking of teams that are coming along, how about the Valiant, or the Titans, sorry, I meant against the Fuel. So obviously big drama going on with the Fuel here because of Decay, quote unquote, benching himself according to reports and playing Valorant and stuff. And I'm not going to get too much into that, other than the fact that obviously it's going to affect team morale one way or the other, even if it's not like everyone getting tilted. It's just a different feel, like not even just on the map of how you're playing Overwatch, but it's in comms, like, that's 1/6 of your team that you're not used to that communications with, And so for the Titans to be able to come up and get the 3-0 sweep to show, they really are on the rise is huge for them. And I'm super excited for it because they have some really good players, and I love watching new players come into the league. And here with the Titans, Dalton and Shockwave, everyone, Shockwave's doing really well. Everyone loves that. But can you believe it was a 3-0 sweep though? Now, Decay's super good. We all know this. He's one of the best in the league. But Doha is also really good too. And just switching out Onigod for Decay, that's the only huge substitution you guys make. And all of a sudden you guys can't compete against one of the newer teams in the league. Even if you took the top 6 best contenders players in the world and put them on a team, they wouldn't be, you shouldn't think they'd be good enough to beat teams like the Fuel. Because, it takes time to build that synergy, that experience, all that stuff. It's a really big factor when it comes into, making new teams like this. But these guys all come together, and they really dominated the Fuel. It was awesome to see as far as from the Titans' viewpoint. But, of course, everyone likes the Fuel, too. I don't know many people who don't like the Fuel. It's a shame, because these guys, everyone wants them to do well. It's one of my favorite tank players in the league. But it just didn't happen. And, I think, depending on what the situation with Decay goes, these guys should be fine. I was listening to the episode of Plat Chat saying how they were quote-unquote already boomed by the time the match started. And I think that's fair to say, on a 1 week basis, something crazy like that happens where your best player is benched. And it messes with your brain a little bit, but I think by the time next week comes around, it's not going to mess with their heads too much. You'll have an entire week to practice the Onigod if Decay's not back. And, mentally, it's a lot easier to get over it. So I think these guys will be fine and return to action pretty normally next week as far as their mental performance goes. Obviously, their on-field performance might suffer a little bit simply because Decay is so good. And even if Onigod didn't put in a terrible performance, I thought he did alright. You can't replace Decay like that very easily, especially in a meta where Tracer's so dominant. And if you really need that, key dominant player to play that dominant role, you're going to struggle no matter who else you have in there when you're subbing someone out. Even if it's of equal skill, if it's, different personality, different play style, it's going to mess with it. So it's awesome to see the Titans on the rise, though. I know, they get a lot of heat because they're new, but it's awesome to see them be able to turn up and prove they belong in the league. So after that, let's see what we got here. We got the Shanghai Dragons and Chengdu Hunters were another game 5. I honestly thought the Chengdu Hunters were going to come away with this one after the 2-0 lead. But the Shanghai Dragons, that's what it takes sometimes to prove you are one of the best teams in the league. I think they have the 2nd best record in the league right now. And this is one of my favorite teams for their starting lineups. Obviously, they've proven they're one of the best. But I love Izzyaki and Luffy. I think that's a really great support line. And I like Luffy on the Baptiste a lot. He's one of my favorite Baptiste players. But I think that this team's true dominance comes down to Fleta, Lip, Ding, and DM, right? Everyone's kind of just is so dominant in that DPS role. It's similar to the Shock, where you have so many people who can fill so many different roles that hero pools really don't affect you as much as a lot of the rest of the league, simply because you can substitute so many people in and out. And I think the Shanghai Dragon's real weakness comes in the form of a tank line. Not that they're bad, they're obviously an extremely good tank line because they are able to play at, like 13-2 record now? But I just think as far as depth goes, that's where their biggest weakness is. But it's obviously not enough to stop them from taking down the Chengdu Hunters today. Huge win for them as they're moving forward in their regular season dominance. And let's just all seriously take a minute to appreciate how far the Dragons have come since Season 1. It's really awesome to see turnarounds like this in the franchise, and they're fun to watch. I love their colors, they look nice on the screen. And, Shanghai Dragons, Chengdu Hunters, what a fun match that is if any match to watch go to Game 5. So, after that, a few other matches were kind of just less noticeable, like the Fusion beating the Uprising. I don't think anybody was really surprised by that. The Atlanta Reign 3-0 against the Toronto Defiant. That was big because even though the Reign aren't the best team in the league, it's good for them to be able to get that sweep to show they can still have those days where they do play really well. And then I guess in kind of a surprise event, the Spitfire beat the Hunters 3-0. I expected the Spitfire to win, but not necessarily 3-0, and I was even more surprised once the Chengdu Hunters ended up taking the Dragons to Game 5 the next day. So, that's about all the important stuff for the week. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.